must have been about 6 years old when my brother and I watched my mother watch a tsunami-like wave hit my mother to the ground, as though she looked as though she was dead. Already we were fatherless. On my left, there was a white couple that just stood there. I screamed. They did not respond. And my brother, Kaya, was about 7 years old. He always had a way of finding out information, and he managed to know one English word, and it was the word that we needed. And so he shouted, "Help!" Still, the couple did not respond. I stood there watching, wondering, why are they not responding? What's the reason? Adults always responded when there was a crisis. And so, puzzled, I thought they're human like us. And then finally I realized it's because they were white and we were black. It was apartheid, but we didn't know that. So I ran looking for black people in the streets, but it was early in the morning, so I couldn't find anybody, and my brother was left behind. Kaya saw other people, and he shouted again, "Help!" They were also white, so they also did not respond. Some hesitated, but nobody came to help. Yesterday, I watched a YouTube video of police shooting students at Rhodes University. And I read some of the comments, and most of the comments were written by white South Africans, and some of them read, "Get them." The coldness of those comments took me back to that moment when I saw people watching coldly, watching my mother about to die and doing nothing about it. So how do I, as a black South African, respond to that? Do I feel like a victim? I'm not a fan of self-pity. The combination of racism and self-pity would have surely led my mother to die. Faith times action times faith equals miracles. So mother pushed herself away from death's grip because she could not bear the thought of her children growing up without a future. My brother's faith caused him to jump. He does not remember how. He got there, but he got there. But it was faith plus action. Black South Africans scream for help, escape death. I'm talking about the poor majority, and depend on miracles daily. I'm standing here before you today, speaking a language you can understand, because, as you know, I didn't even know the word help at some stage, because of hundreds of miracles that came together. So I'm standing on miracles today and standing before you, and I don't know how you came to be here. And so I pray that those miracles would be imparted to you as well. So God sees, and God hears, and God acts. When you are poor and black, you perish if you have no faith. You have to learn to put your hand in God's bag of miracles and grab a miracle. It is for this reason that many poor black students right now are demanding for free education. They're not demanding for free education because there are reasons that we can all come up with, but it's because they know where they are because of miracles. My topic today is being South African is a full-time job. I'm speaking fully owning my identity as a black woman. God taught me to embrace this identity as my superpower, if you will, when I'm being knocked down by whiteness. I'm obviously speaking as a South African, and I'm speaking as a Christian. I cannot speak about Christians in civil society without doing the very basics of allowing myself to be stripped to the very core until I am not afraid of losing anything of myself. In fact, Jesus calls us to die. What does it mean for me to die as a black South African? I mean, there's several ways of dying, but one of them is, how do I respond to racism? For example, what happens in my heart? Because to be part of civil society as a Christian, it's an internal work as much as it's an external expression. When I encounter racism, what is my response? When I read horrible comments where people are unfeeling, people are cold, people are cruel, what is my response? I look at it and I see, as a Christian, I have to see the spirit that's operating, that a person is allowing themselves to spew out, really vomit from hell. And so they allow themselves to be almost a channel of the dark world, because racism is an attack on God's image. It does not represent, because we all made in God's image. So to attack somebody else who looks different to you is to attack God's image himself. And so we have to shake off those things. I have to say, okay, how am I responding? If I'm offended, if I don't pity the person, because if I don't pity the person that is speaking racism, then it means that there's something inside of me that's not free. It means I'm not seeing clearly. And so our call as Christians in civil society is simple. It is to worship God. Worship is doing what God tells us to do. So ask yourself, what can't you give up if God asks for it? David said, I will not give to God that which costs me nothing. The current state of South Africa requires worshippers who will not spare even their lives. And we can say the worst has probably not even begun. How many of you have children who attend the same schools you attended? Same kind of schools. Do you think repeating the same thing your parents did will change society? Imagine your child in a township school. Now, let us place ourselves in God's shoes for a minute. God owns everything and lacks nothing. Never mind the fact that Xhosa people say that, if you lack nothing and you own everything, we say ngumlungu, which means you're a white person. But you're not God. But let's go back to God. Now, this God sends his only son to attend a school. He's wealthy, he's got everything. He sends his son to the slums to attend a school in the slums, and is adopted by a family, allows him to be adopted by a poor family in the slums. And he eats with the people in the slums. It is there that he creates these miracles, because he sees the condition of the people in those spaces. He lives in the same conditions, under the same oppressive government. So Jesus came to show us as Christians how to live, right? And so let us say hundreds of Christian parents leave the comfort of their private or semi-public schools for the sake of thousands of poor children who experience horrible education. Say one school, one child pays about 100,000 rand and another pays about 20,000 per year. And there are thousands of children who experience poor education. What if Christian parents took their children to those spaces and their children experience the same bad education that the other children experience, and in that space use the money they have, those hundreds of thousands? Because now if you see the condition that other children are experiencing, will you not respond? Will our demographics not change in our country? Jesus said, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Wouldn't we see miracles if we saw hundreds of Christians deliberately reversing apartheid with their counter-apartheid lifestyles and mindsets? Nyanga, Guguletu, Khayelitsha, Kraaifontein, Harare, Delft, Mfuleni are in the top 10 most dangerous places in South Africa. That's 7 out of 10 in the Western Cape. What would happen if your family moved into those areas deliberately? No security, no walls, maybe in shacks. What would happen if you as a Christian took your entire family and moved it to that space? Once upon a time, there was a gifted young man who had everything. And Jesus asked him to give up everything, to sell everything, and follow him. And he said no. He was doing everything right. He was paying his tithes. He was giving to the poor. He was the perfect guy. But he said no to Jesus. And Jesus let him walk away. Simply because he could not do that. And so he missed out on the greatest adventure of his life. And so I would like to invite you and say, what if we reversed apartheid by how we lived? In our education, in our homes, and lived and broke down the walls. Because if we don't do it as Christians, we don't do it. Perhaps there'll be no gang violence. Perhaps there'll be no rape. Perhaps there'll be no murder. Perhaps there will be that promised revival that's supposed to happen. Perhaps Cape Town can be that city of worship. Because if we take faith times action times faith, we will have miracles. Thank you.